This is a screencast for Derivational Relations, Sort 8, suffixes ment, less, and ness. We're going to jump right into our sort today, and the first thing I'd like you to do is just go ahead and sort your words. We have the three suffixes ment, less, and ness. So go ahead and pause the screencast and sort your words in the appropriate categories. All right, so now all of your words should be grouped by suffix, ment, less, or ness. Now there are two words, powerlessness and fearlessness, that have two suffixes added to the base word. I kind of set those aside for now, and you'll see why as we talk in a little bit. The next thing I'd like you to do is go through and underline all of the base words. So as we go through this category, we have amuse, and then the base word here is punish. And the base word of agreement is agree. So please pause the podcast and go ahead and underline all of the base words in your list. All right, so now you should have all of your base words underlined in each category. And let's take a look at the base words and see how adding a suffix changes the base word. Let's start with our ment, M-E-N-T suffix. We have, our base word was amuse, and then our full word is amusement. Now, the suffix ment, when we add a suffix to the base words you'll notice are verbs, action words, and adding that suffix ment changes that to a noun. Whoops. And in most of these cases, the noun is a thing. So we have amuse, which is a verb, moves to amusement, which is a noun. We have punish, which is a verb, and then punishment is a noun. Agree is a verb, and then agreement is a noun. So again, when we add the suffix ment to these words, we change the base word from a verb to a noun. Now let's look at the less category and see how adding the suffix less changes these base words. First we have hope, and then we have hopeless. Now for these words, adding less to the end of a word as a suffix turns these words into adjectives. So they are describing words. Hope turns into hopeless. Tact to tactless. Those are words that describe. Any ideas what that suffix less means? Adding the suffix less actually changes these words to mean without. So we have the word flaw, and when we add less to that, that means without flaw. Fruitless, our base word is fruit, and if we add the suffix less to that, that means fruitless, without fruit. The word breath, when we add the suffix less to it, that changes to an adjective, breathless. That means without breath or unable to catch a breath. Priceless, our base is price, and we add the suffix less to it to make that word priceless. Now, priceless is a little bit different. This word means it's so valuable, you can't even put a price on it. So the definition of priceless is a little bit different than some of these other ones. But again, adding the adjective less changes a word to an adjective, and that changes the meaning to mean without something. The next column is ness, N-E-S-S. And let's look at how adding that suffix ness changes the base word. For our base word, we have salty, and then adding ness changes that word to saltiness. Polite, and then politeness. Now when we add the suffix ness, we're actually changing adjectives into nouns. Our base words are adjectives: salty, polite, friendly, blind, empty, dizzy, and lazy. Those are all adjectives or describing words. When we add the suffix ness, it turns it into a noun, which means the state of being. So, saltiness is the state of being salty. Something is salty. Politeness is the state of being polite. Friendliness is the state of being friendly. Blindness is the state of being blind, and so on. So again, adding the suffix ness, N-E-S-S, changes an adjective into a noun that means the state of being. So let's write that up here. Adjective to noun. And then at the top, I'm also going to write state of being. Oops. All right, we have two more words: powerlessness and fearlessness. And these words actually go on a pretty big journey when they have suffixes added to them. First, we have the bases power and fear. Then we're adding the suffix less, and then we're adding the suffix ness. So it actually changes the base word from a noun, power, to an adjective, powerless, to back to a noun, powerlessness. And again, this is a state of being word. It's a state of being powerless or having no power. Same thing with fearless, fear. We have the base word fear, which is a noun. We change it to fearless, which is an adjective, meaning without fear. And then adding that suffix ness changes it back to a noun, fearlessness, which is the state of being fearless, or the state of being without fear. There's one more thing I want to take a look at really quickly, and those are, I want to look quickly at how the base words change their spelling. And actually, most of our spelling changes are in this ness category. So if we look at some of the base words, which ones do you notice aren't the correct spelling when we actually underline these? Salty, for example, has a Y in the word salty, but when we add the suffix, that Y changes to an I before we add the suffix. So I'm just going to put a little star here to remind myself that the base word salty, the Y changes to an I. Polite, that's the correct spelling of polite. Friendly. Here's another one. The word friendly, our base word, is spelled with a Y, but when we add the suffix ness, we change that Y to an I. So again, I'm just going to put a little star to remind myself that that word has a spelling change. Blindness, blind, that's the correct spelling of blind. Empty. Here's another one. Empty is spelled with a Y, so before we add that suffix, we need to remember to change the Y to an I. Dizzy is another one. Dizzy has a Y at the end as well. So we have to remember to change the Y to an I before we add our suffix. And lazy is the same way. Lazy ends with a Y. So before we add that suffix, we need to change the Y to an I. Now I'd like you to go ahead and write these words on the first day of your sort, or day one sort in your packet. I'd also like you to make sure that you have these descriptors on each of the headings. So remember that meant changes a base word from a verb to a noun. When we add the suffix less, we make that word into an adjective. And then our suffix ness, we go from an adjective to a noun, and that means a state of being. So go ahead and write these words in your sort. I'd pause the screencast before you do that so you can have these up and make sure you have everything written the right way. And then again, remember to refer to this screencast as often as necessary in the next 2 weeks.